We are back at the EarthX TV podcast stage, and we got climate heroes galore. This place is crawling with them. And these are folks that are working on issues that we may not have thought are contributors to climate change and our overall carbon footprint. But we got somebody here working on something that I had never even thought about, and that is airport decarbonization. I've got Darcy Zaraubiak right here. And my friend right here is really breaking down to me the importance of understanding the difference between decarbonizing airlines versus decarbonizing airports. Why is that such an important distinction?
It's a very important issue because the first thing is that the airline industry as a whole has made tremendous improvements in fuel efficiency.
Right.
However, historically, going back to the 1970s, the improvement in aircraft efficiency has averaged 0.7% per year. Unfortunately, air travel has grown at 5 to 6% per year. So even though today's aircraft are considerably more fuel efficient, the fact that more and more people are traveling means it's become a larger and larger source of carbon emissions.
Right.
And so then when you look at, the global CO2 emissions, right now, aircraft and air travel is associated with 2.5%, maybe 3% of global carbon emissions.
Wow.
That's fine, except when you look at projections, it's not going to shrink, it's growing to 5-6%. So as you try to tackle climate change, going with those sort of forecasts cause it to be quite alarming that air travel is going to become a growing source of climate change. So it's the responsibility of everybody in the industry to try to make changes. I think, as you said, it's very important to understand that there are two separate operators at airports. There are the airlines that operate aircraft that have contracts with travelers to fly them somewhere and buy a lot of jet fuel. On the other hand, there are airports.
Yeah.
And airports are important parts of a community. And so if you look at actual emissions at an airport, more than 90% come from aircraft and jet fuel. So you're down to 10% coming from the airport.
Right.
But as you know, with climate change, every little bit counts.
Every little bit counts, for sure.
And so the airlines are not going to solve the problem for airports, and airports aren't going to solve the problem for airlines. But it's the responsibility of airports to solve the problems that they can. And so when you look at this problem, that's why airports are rolling up their sleeves and trying to come up with solutions.
Right. So what do you think are like the main sources of carbon emissions from the airports themselves? What's doing most of that work?
I would go and say there are probably a half dozen sources of airport-related emissions that are significant and controllable. The first ones are heating and cooling of the airport.
Right.
So when you look at how an airport heats and cools itself, some use electric chillers, some use steam chillers. Steam chillers emit direct emissions, whereas electric chillers are emitting emissions from the grid.
Right.
Those heating and cooling emissions are typically about half of an airport's emissions.
Wow. What are some other sources?
Another source would be diesel and gasoline consumption for their fleet vehicles. So if there's buses that take passengers out to remote parking lots, fire trucks that run around the airfield, all of those burn gasoline and diesel. But then, so those are direct sources of emissions. It was said it's important to win friends and influence people.
Right, right.
So one way that airports have been trying to leverage their role is to go after ground support equipment and preconditioned air. And so you say, what the heck is
preconditioned air?
So
I didn't even know you could do that.
So when an aircraft pulls up to the gate, and let's just say a normal narrow body aircraft, They're not going to run the engines, but people want lights on in the cabin because
Right.
otherwise you couldn't find the exit. And they want it to be cool and comfortable or heated and comfortable. And so those two services an aircraft is able to provide because it has an auxiliary power unit in the
Got
tail.
you.
So on a narrow body aircraft, an auxiliary power unit typically burns about 36 gallons of jet fuel per hour.
Wow.
A sophisticated airport
When
installs
you
what
multiply that by all the aircraft there,
at the
wow.
gates, yes. And so modern airports typically provide preconditioned air and 400 hertz. So the best way to tell is when you're at your gate, if you look and there's a long yellow tube, uh,
I've
uh,
seen that too.
yes, so that tube provides chilled air. And
Gotcha.
so that way, when there is preconditioned air, an aircraft can turn off its APU and you're
Right.
saving 36 gallons an hour of jet fuel,
I like it.
which is a great solution. This is a sort of a crazy thing because that's an airport using its influence to help an airline reduce its emissions. So that's one example. Another example is with ground support equipment. So when an aircraft pulls up, you've seen the bag tugs,
Yep,
you've seen
I've
belt
seen 'em.
motors, you've seen all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And they're all running over the ramp, typically burning gasoline or diesel fuel.
Correct.
That's a perfect opportunity to electrify
Right.
the equipment. And in our experience, uh, it all comes down to money.
As do many things that we're trying to do, for sure.
So a charging stand for a piece of ground support equipment costs $25,000 per stand. So it's expensive.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the airline saves over $6,000 a year by having an electric piece of GSE instead of a conventional piece of GSE.
Got you.
That's outside the realm of where airlines are willing
And
to make
GSE is
the
ground support equipment, right?
ground support equipment. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes, ground support equipment. That's outside the realm of where typical airlines make that investment.
Okay.
But an airport can make that investment, and then the airline uses it and achieves those emission reductions. There
Gotcha.
are other technologies that are also pushing the boundaries. So I'm not sure if you've come in to an airport and the aircraft stopped short of the gate because the guy with the sticks didn't show up.
Listen, that just happened to me last year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so imagine that. Or imagine that you come in and there's a lightning storm and the ramp's been cleared and nobody can come out on the ramp for the next 15 minutes because lightning is
Right.
flying. I mean, and those delays can last 90 minutes. Aircraft sits out there
It's just out there burning.
burning fuel the whole
Right.
time. Well, so now there are laser guidance systems. They're called Automated Visual Docking Guidance Systems. That's a big acronym in there.
Right.
But what it does is it eliminates the need for guys to be on the ramp with the sticks.
Right.
And so therefore the pilot can pull in and set the brake and you can deplane your passengers immediately. You can't unload the baggage because the ramp still is closed.
Right.
But on the other hand, people can get off and more importantly, stop burning the fuel. So there's a win-win. The passengers are happier.
And you don't got to get wrist struck by lightning by the guy holding the sticks, right?
That's exactly right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You know, before we got on air, you were talking about the time horizons when it comes to what is going to be lasting longer, making a difference in decarbonization. And so can you kind of break that down for me again? Because I thought it was really interesting. Airports versus airlines, who stays longer?
Absolutely. So the first thing is airports around the country are celebrating their 80th, 90th. Some of them are celebrating their 100th anniversary.
Right.
This is de facto because that's when flight.
Right. That's when flight happened.
That's when flight was discovered. But the reality is, these airports that are here right now are going to likely be in those same locations for the next 100 years.
Right.
You know, if you look at the U.S. over the last 3 decades, we've opened 4 new airports, I think.
Wow.
In that entire time frame, we've refurbished some, expanded some, but there's not a lot of new airports opening. Air travel is going to be part of our culture for a long time.
Right.
And so, therefore, these airports are going to be where they are
Where they
for
are.
a really long time. On the other hand, I think this week we saw that Spirit is likely to liquidate.
Yeah.
Airlines do not have a long history of stability. And as a result of that, airports look at things in terms of generations and long term.
Right.
They get bonding that goes out for 30 years. Airlines, on the other hand, look at things for 24 months or
Right.
36 months. So just like I said with the EGSE chargers, where it's something that has notionally a 4 to 5 year payback,
Right.
that's outside the realm of what an airline's willing to look at, but it's well within what an airport would look at.
Got you.
So trying to meld those two together is extraordinarily important.
Got you. So what we're saying is that the airplanes and the airlines do not last as long as the airports themselves, simply because of the fact of the cycle of business.
That's right.
The cycle of business, boom and bust happens, and it affects the airlines more than it affects the air actual ports. And so I was just wondering, like, how did you get into this, man? Like, what is your degree in? Where did you study? Talk to me about like you as a guy. How did you get on this path?
I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, up in
Okay.
Canada.
Yeah.
I came down and did my graduate studies at Princeton, doing combustion and
Hello.
propulsion of rocket systems,
Wow.
and have stayed in the U.S. ever since. After leaving Princeton, I went and worked for Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport,
Got you.
and I've been in aviation ever since I worked there.
Listen, so what was it that made you say, okay, of all the things to focus on, I actually have to focus on the environmental side of what these airports are emitting? What was your like awakening to that?
So I think that environmental issues are one of the largest constraints to airport growth and expansion.
I believe it.
And so, as an example, I did a noise study at Burbank Airport.
Okay.
We received 1.1 million complaints
Wow.
or the airport received 1.1 million complaints as a result of that. I think that's illustrative of how concerned people are about environmental issues at airports. When an airport seeks to expand, litigation is almost assumed to be
Right.
part of the process. And so having been on the defending side of numerous lawsuits,
Right.
I think it's been clear. And so all told, we actually went to Congress in, I guess it was 2005, and we said, let's make a law that encourages airports to do things proactively.
Got you.
And so they created what was called the Voluntary Airport Low Emission Program, in which, so rather than airports waiting until they have an expansion and they're in litigation and then they choose to mitigate, instead this VAIL program created a credit system where an airport can do things proactively. By doing things proactively, it banks the credits.
Yeah.
So then when it's time to expand, it has this array of credits that it can rely upon.
Got you. So these are the things that people don't even think about. It's happening beneath our feet all the time when we go to the airport. Which airports are you seeing the most success at? Which do you have projects operating in right now?
So right now, I'm actively working for LAX.
Wow, that's
For
a big one.
Port Authority, New York, New Jersey, at both LaGuardia and at Kennedy. For BWI Airport,
Wow.
for Austin. I think that's my array of candidates this week.
Okay.
But we've worked, I think collectively I've worked for over 75 U.S. airports.
Wow.
And with all those airports, and every single one of those airports has been on an emission reduction project.
Got you.
So, so the desire to improve things is widespread, and it's it's industry wide.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what kind of, let's see, understanding or acceptance of the need to address this problem are you finding when you introduce these programs there? Like, and so it seems to me that folks are already on board. They understand that this is something that needs to be addressed and tackled. Are you generally finding that, or are you meeting any resistance?
I don't. So if I'm there, they're asking me to be there. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm not finding any resistance.
Got you.
But I think their motivations are very different.
Okay.
And so in the case of say any of the California airports, there is the California Air Resources Board, which has been pushing very hard for airports to do a lot of emission reduction projects. And so, if I go to LAX or somewhere,
Right.
they're more than likely to be responding to a state mandate
Got you.
than they are perhaps doing something voluntary. On the other hand, when I went out to Tulsa, Tulsa is a great airport, but it was all about the opportunity to lower the cost of doing business for the airlines. So
Right.
they went off, got some federal money, and did a great project. But what they were doing was truly voluntary. They saw an opportunity to get some money, and they did that.
Right. So the incentives are different. People are after different things when they do this, but ultimately, good is getting done.
A profound amount of good, and
Yeah.
so if you went to FAA's website and you look at the VAL, the Voluntary Airport Low Emissions, and so just to be clear, in the last the FAA tracks the progress on these improvements.
Good,
They've
good.
always tracked NOx, and they historically had tracked CO2, but rather than CO2 now they track fuel burn, because fuel burn is maybe better associated with the economic argument.
Yeah.
It's not hard to figure out to convert CO2 to fuel burn, but that seems to be the currency of the day is fuel burn.
Got you. And so as we're wrapping up here, I just kind of wanted to know, like, what are the big projects that you have in front of you, and what would you like to see going forward in, let's say, the next 10-year time horizon? What would you like to see implemented?
The number one thing I'd like to see is, as I had mentioned, the automated visual docking guidance system.
Yeah.
I'd like that to be certified as an emission reduction project, because I
Gotcha.
think that's possible, and it's something I'm working on to try to achieve. In terms of the next decade, I think I'd like to see the electrification of most ground support equipment out there. I think
Gotcha.
that's achievable. I think
Right.
it's financially beneficial. And more importantly, it's a natural hedge against shock to the industry. So,
Right.
as you know, right now, oil has gone up through the roof.
Right.
Wouldn't it be nice to have your operational costs locked down with electricity rather than being subject to gasoline and diesel prices?
I think a lot of people are asking those questions right now simply because these are the things that are reminding us how dependent upon this resource called oil that we are in its various forms. And so I see that as the silver lining about this issue, this conflict going on when it comes to fuel. We're looking for alternatives. We're looking to better produce it, and we're looking to make sure that we have a sustainable means forward that is resilient to all of these shocks that can happen in the world. And right there at airports in your local hometown, we got you and folks like you working on that. So Darcy Zaraubiak, I appreciate you showing up today and making it clear that this airport emissions thing is in good hands, man. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen and learn about the issues that I care passionately about. So thank you.
Absolutely. Here at EarthX 2026, we have climate warriors of all shapes and sizes, all fields of endeavor, making sure that they're tackling things that you wouldn't even imagine, including emissions at airports. And we've met a lot of wonderful people here, and there's more to come. So you guys keep it locked right here. EarthX 2026, the TV podcast stage. I'm Theo E.J. Wilson. Please stay tuned. Thank you.